Welcome on into Locked On Auburn. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Going to structure this show a little bit different. I'm going to talk for a little bit here at the beginning. We recorded a recruiting episode with Brian Smith. He'll join me in a few minutes whenever I'm done with this. But that was a few hours ago. And then Hugh Freeze, since all that happened, Hugh Freeze had a speaking engagement in Alexander City, or, I guess he had a speaking arrangement at Lake Martin. Justin Hokanson of On3 was there, and he's got a lot of quotes from both Hugh Freeze and John Cohen discussing the recruiting landscape at Auburn. And it lines up a lot with what we've talked about earlier in the week. And we don't really touch on it a ton later in the show. So I wanted to kind of get out in front of it on this show and talk about it. And once again, there's a free article over at On3, Auburn Live. Hoke does a great job with this. But a lot of the quotes line up with some of the speculation of, okay, Auburn feels that they are doing things the right way with this new house settlement that they're in. We've heard speculation and chatter and, maybe some concern of, some of these offers that are on the table for some of these guys that Auburn's losing out on. There's questions on, okay, is that doable in this new world that we live in this rev share environment? And they give a few examples, and we'll touch on that in a second. But one of the things Freeze said when he was asked about the recruiting struggles as of late, this is Freeze, quote, "First of all, you want to make sure you're operating with what the settlement says. We think we are, we're going by what we believe to be the accurate interpretation of it. It's not really to our advantage to what we're doing right now because others, I think, are operating in a different manner. You have to operate within the manner of what the settlement really says and the interpretation we've received, and that's what we're doing. We're talking about a staff that's put together 2 top 10 classes, and here we are, we're really not in that realm right now." And that lines up with some of the stuff that we've talked about. I mean, everything that we've seen from a recruiting standpoint on the Hugh Freeze front, the Hugh Freeze era of Auburn football, these last month and a half, maybe a little bit longer, it's so different. And Brian and I will talk about that more in a second. And this makes sense. This makes sense because it lines up a lot with what we've heard with, okay, Denarius Gray had a larger offer by Kentucky. Shadarius Tootle reportedly had a larger offer at Georgia. And the whole speculation of, is it money? Well, does Auburn all of a sudden not have money? Well, I mean, it would make sense because they spent so much money on this portal class, but also they have to know that money on the books is about to open up. So I think that's interesting. There was a quote that John Cohen said in Hoke's story that I thought was interesting. This is John Cohen talking. Let me illustrate. You have an $800,000 offer, and school says we're going to give you $400,000 in revenue share, and we're going to give you $400,000 through a third party. I'm not 100% sure that everybody in this country is operating under that premise, which is reality. And if any point in time they go over that rev share number, which can reflect both the third party offer and the rev share offer, we've been told there's some pretty harsh penalties that come with that. We at Auburn are going to take this very seriously, but we're still going to win recruiting battles. We're going to do it the right way. I can't speak for the rest of the recruiting world, but I can tell you this: Auburn's going to do it the right way. And so if that's the case, which is what some of the speculation has been both on this show and elsewhere, I think that's great that Auburn's playing by these new rules and it doesn't look like everyone else is. And I love that they're speaking out publicly about this. And I bet that's going to be a big, massive topic later this month at SEC Media Days. But I still think that's a lot of assumption to be put into this new governing body. And I think some of this messaging that Auburn's going to start doing, which makes sense here, is like, hey, we're playing by the rules that you put out there. Like, we better not get burned by this. Another thing that Cohen said that I thought was insightful. I was not aware of this. We feel like August 1st is a big day coming up. For those of you who aren't aware, and I'm sure you are aware, August 1st, I wasn't aware. August 1st is the first day that a prospective student athlete can receive an offer on paper. Okay, that's a big day. It's not rumor, it's not innuendo. It's not this person says this, it's offer on paper. We're a good distance away from August 1st, and we're a really good distance away from December. And so all of these on paper offers, I'm assuming that's by design so they can then check all of this. And I'm just curious to see if after that date, you start to see some people that are committed elsewhere say, okay, that's interesting. So this is good news for Auburn, assuming that the new governing body, NIL Go, I think is what Cohen referred to it as in this story. We're going to cross that mountain when we get, this is Cohen again in Hoke's story. We're going to cross that mountain when we get there. But just to be clear now, if there's an offer in place that is a third-party offer from NIL Go, it has to count against the cap. So the whole rev sharing cap that we've talked about, these third-party deals, Cohen is saying that it's his understanding that's going to count against that number. And so Hugh Freeze says, talking about the offers, this is Hugh Freeze talking about his quote in Hoke's story. It does seem kind of strange that we're like some of the lowest range of numbers. I mean, we're like, really, really low compared to some. And I'm trying to figure that out. But I do think it will shake out in the long run, but it's complicated and hard to sit there and feel great about. So I think I feel better now than I did when we recorded the show that you're about to hear. It's still interesting. And once again, like if everybody plays by the letter of the law and it's enforced, I think Auburn will be in a better spot in the coming months. I think those are big ifs. I think those are big assumptions. But in the long term, it might be a better thing that Auburn's playing this way. So we'll see. Hoke did a great job with all this. So curious to see if there's anybody that like responds to this. Because, I mean, you look at who Auburn has lost to as of late. Florida State seems to be a common one. Georgia seems to be a common one. Alabama seems to be a common one. They lost a tight end commit to or recruit J.C. Anderson to Ole Miss lately. I don't know. I'm just curious to see what this looks like. And surely, these recruits are hearing this from Auburn of like, hey, are you even really going to be able to get that? So just kind of interesting navigating this new world and reading these quotes from Freeze and John Cohen. Pretty transparent. So there's that. Let's get into today's show, our conversation with Brian Smith. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's Recruiting Thursday. We're joined by Brian Smith, host of The Portal. That's Locked On's national recruiting NIL transfer portal show. We'll talk about another portal window being added, what or who could be next for the Auburn Tigers. But the question that Auburn fans, SEC fans, I mean, it's become a national spectacle at this point, college football fans, what in the world is going on with Auburn recruiting? Because you could point to things at Auburn that happened on the field since Hugh Freeze has been here, but off the field, it's been a machine. I've never seen a 180 like this when it comes to recruiting, when nothing has happened, so it seems, and all of a sudden now Auburn is sitting clearly in last when it comes to recruiting prowess with this class in the SEC.
This is wild because you and I, two and a half months ago, were like, they've got a chance at a top 10 class. This is a team that is making up ground on their rivals. It's like they just fell into a hole.
Oh.
It's It's bizarre. Like the way it trended and it just, the escalator stopped and everybody just fell off.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I don't know if I can think of another team that this has happened to that actually has a good staff of recruiting. Like it's usually a staff that sucks. Auburn's staff does not suck. It's
or it's a group where, you know, a coach gets fired and then everybody jumps ship or whatever. And I know some people are saying like, well, Hugh Freeze might be on the hot seat going into the season and all that. And I'm not going to push back on that, but they were recruiting fine 3 or 4 months ago. I mean, this is a recent thing in the last 30 to 50 days, I think is fair, where it's like all that momentum just hit a brick wall. And outside of flipping Peyton Falzone from Penn State, like that's been it, Brian.
Yeah, I don't think the bleeding is stopped based on the text messages that I've received either. Even besides some of the stuff you and I have talked about, I've heard some other stuff that I'll leave it for now because I need to see it happen. But this class may diminish a little more based on the commitment list as it sits today. The pieces are falling off here. And I don't know the full backstories as to why.
Yeah.
That's where it gets crazy.
Let's take a stab at the backstory because there's a few names I am going to list off to you later as far as, you know, who could be next or whatever and what Auburn needs to do. But what do you think is the most logical reason for this? And I'm sure it's more than just one thing, but I don't think it's the just winning thing because then you're not losing guys to Kentucky. You're not losing guys just to FSU. You're not losing guys, you know, with Mpuma going to Nebraska. Like, I think it's more than that. I think the only thing that's logically consistent is Auburn isn't offering as strong when it comes to compensation. I think that's the only thing that's uniform across all of these situations. Now it's more nuanced than that. Every situation is different. Every relationship is different. Every list of priorities for each kid is different. But to me, that's the only thing that makes sense, unless the other one is the staff has given up, which I don't think is the case.
The last part, I'm just going to go ahead and end that. Been around this many times. That's not the case.
Yeah, which is what makes it unusual because like it doesn't appear to be effort related.
A lot of those guys has aspirations to be coordinators and head coaches. One of the easiest ways to move up is recruiting.
Sure.
So that's just not the answer. Like if you're not an elite recruiter, the chances you moving up are really low. There are very few guys that are good enough as just pure coaches to move up. So that's not it. I think one of the biggest problems, and I mentioned this to you a little over a year ago, too many of the kids that Auburn got, they've won in NIL battles where they get into the final 2 or 3 and they would outbid somebody or whatever. They don't have as much NIL this year. They've got to win on the field to a certain degree to get some kids that I'm not saying they're going to take the hometown discount, but it's cool to go to Auburn again. But they can't do nothing about that now. And it still doesn't alleviate the question we just had. Why were they good a month and a half ago and not now? That is still has me dumbfounded. You can change some of this and flip kids if you win games this fall. I'm not disputing that, but I'm still just lost as to why they've fallen off. I've had people that have no interest in Auburn talk to me about Auburn randomly in text messages and stuff. Like people that could care less. Like, what's going on with Auburn? And I'm like, bro, I don't know. This is wild. That's what I knew it was bad. People that don't even pay attention to them mentioning it to me. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment last year where you started to really feel that momentum at the macro level when these kids started seeing like going to Auburn is the cool thing, the trendy thing to do, because that's what a lot of other elite guys were doing. You have multiple top 10 classes in a row. And now you've got 6 commits, Brian. 6 at the time of us recording this. And it's just so odd to me. It's so strange. And it's really hard to, because I'm not trying to be negative. Like, I think there are things they can do to fix it. We'll touch on that in a second. But the hole is too deep now for you to dig out of it to where we want Auburn to be, where we want them to be in another top 10 class. Like, can they dig out of it and get some key faces in this class and finish in the top 30? Sure. maybe top 20, maybe. They'd have to have a lot happen. But it's just so strange. It's so strange to me.
Yeah, they would have to flip what out of the guys they went after, because they had a pretty finite list early on, and they just went after big dogs like they have the last 2 years. They'd have to flip 4 or 5 guys that are picking like LSU, Georgia, Bama, Florida. Those are not easy flips. So, I was with Marquez Daniel today at Cedarian. He showed up at Cedarian's announcement. I talked to him. I said, why Florida? He said, well, they recruited me for 4 years. And I know Auburn did too. It's just surprising. They missed on a lot of kids we just thought they were going to get. But it's not easy to flip kids from Florida. So I got top 30, I think would be the objective now, realistically.
I mean, just to be totally realistic. Yeah. And can you survive it long term? Yes, you can, with portal and backfill. You're not going to feel this till a few years from now. And if you backfill through the portal correctly in certain windows, you can be fine. Not ideal, but you can survive it, because the main thing that matters is winning this year. If you win this year, it fixes a lot of things. And if you don't, then, a lot of the guys that were committed weren't going to stay committed anyway.
I couldn't agree more. The guys that are on the fence, if you give kids that aren't all the way bought into your program a reason to leave, they leave. Today's society is too thin-skinned. Everything's got to be perfect or they jump. That's just not football. That's across the board. But if you do the opposite and you overachieve, you go 9-3 or something, and then it's a totally different ballgame. You'll get some of those flips. Could you see Marquez Daniel or somebody else? Sure. Now,
do you anticipate it getting better before the season or no?
I think they're going to get some kids because there's still guys that are on the board we expect them to get. I just don't know how quickly, because some of the kids don't have decision dates, and then they just, like you see Hayes Fawcett and Edit, so somebody commits to Auburn or whatever. I just don't know when they're going to happen. So that's the thing. There are a few kids that I thought they were going to get that they're not trending for now, too. We can get into that here in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second. Right. Yeah. So, who are some of these guys? Who's trending towards Auburn still? Who's trending away? There's one that I think is a major deal, Brian. I think you'll agree. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. You ever wish managing money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can be easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control of your finances, not just the budgeting aspect of your finances, but also the investment part of your finances, and linking them together and giving you insights as far as your spending habits and what you could do to help take your finances to the next level. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Brian Smith, host of The Portal, hanging out with us. Thank you for making Locked On Auburn your first listen. Make Brian's show, The Portal, your second listen today. Brian, when you look at some of these names that are floating around, I think as far as these next guys, I think you have to start with Wilson Zaire. Obviously, younger brother of Killian Zaire. This guy is used to rooting for Auburn. And you're starting to see reporters say he might be trending to Florida State. And that's just one where, I mean, we've done shows throughout the last few weeks asking the question of why is he not committed yet? And it's like, okay, well, if you lose them all together, what does that mean? And what does that say to everyone else?
Yeah, look, on this one, I remember interviewing him on Auburn's campus. He made no bones about it. He's an Auburn fan. His brother went there. Auburn's the leader, the whole bag. And I just thought, barring them just laying an egg and it's not recruiting him properly, pretty much this slam dunk. And here we are. Again, I will steadfastly say Auburn staff does a very good job.
Yeah.
I'm not saying take anything like Bama wants him, Georgia wants him, Florida State wants. This is a national recruit. but he's got just so many ties to Auburn because he's been there a billion times.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to lose that one. And it's not like Auburn's super deep at offensive tackle, a spot that you love to talk about, by the way. So I was a little surprised
right now to talk about it, but in the future, the current offensive line looks great.
Yeah, but this is how you win in the SEC is you stack offensive and defensive line. It's not a secret, especially when it's the kid that you just should get because he openly says from the get-go Auburn's the favorite. If they lose him to Florida State, like that's a program. If there's any program that has sucked at recruiting O-line more than Auburn in the last 5 to 8 years, it's the Noles. That would be awful. And ironically, Herb Hand, who coached at Auburn with Gus, would be the one to get him. That would be ironic. I think they're a little vindictive, maybe, but they're going after some Auburn kids, and they're winning right now in some of those battles. But they won 2 games last year. I know. I cover Florida State. Like that is, you can't lose to Florida State. Like they are the worst major Power 4 program at O-line recruiting. It's not over yet, and it's one way to signing day. But when you message me that, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I haven't even looked it up because, like, I know that you're not just going to pull my leg on that. I'm like, there's no reason even to go look.
No, it was from. It was on 3, so I'm sure they're just not making it up. Adam Balagoon Ali, linebacker, South Florida kid. Been trending towards Auburn for a while. Where are you with him? I mean, you think Auburn's held on that front? Or is he seeing all of this and now you're thinking like, do I want to commit to Auburn?
I had a phone call with somebody today that knows him, spoke to him. Kentucky and Missouri are still in play. So it's one of the 3. I do not have a date for him, but he's expected to announce in July.
July 6th.
Okay, so that would be this Sunday. That's a kid that, like, he fits Auburn culturally, schematically, the whole 9 yards, and they've been after him a long time. But Missouri, of those 3, is the one that is interested. They've started to put a lot of emphasis on South Florida. Maybe he signs with the Tigers, but it's not the one in Auburn, Alabama. They've got some serious NIL there too. Kentucky obviously flipped Denarius, but if they lose a kid to Kentucky again, that would be for me DEFCON 1.
Yeah, and obviously you're referring to the other one was Denarius Gray, who flipped to Kentucky earlier in the week. I don't know if you've been on since that happened, but once again, like the rumblings and the chatter is Kentucky's offer was more than what Auburn's offer was. And so then it's one of 2 things. I don't think there's another option. You tell me if you can think of another one. The one option is you don't have it. You don't have the money. Or 2, you don't think he's worth the money. But you got to think all the guys that are currently committed are worth more to Auburn now than they were when they originally committed because they've lost so much. Do you think it's one of those 2? Or do you think there's a third option that I haven't thought of?
If they don't think he's worth keeping and losing him to Kentucky, the people that are involved, I mean, it's their money, but then they've got the wrong people supporting the program. Because I know Denarius, I've known him for a few years. That's a kid that is a borderline top 100 recruit. He's a boundary receiver. Like, you got to pay that kid. And I'm no offense to Kentucky, but I would assume the money is substantially different because if there's one SEC school I'm not sending a receiver to, it's Kentucky. Their quarterback room they got one kid that's got talent. That's it. They got one. That room for a long time, and that coaches, they suck at passing the football.
Sure.
That's my bigger concern. I mean, they're terrible at it. I'm sorry. So I was like, even if they did pay more, like, how is that possible? Auburn, like they're better at throwing the football. There's more development there. That one really surprised me.
Yeah.
Kentucky's terrible at passing the football. It's just hard to watch. So yeah, that was wild.
Yeah. Yeah. But once again, it goes to the chatter of, the offer was better, which is the same chatter you heard about Shadarius Tootle and Devin Carter, which those both make sense for different reasons. I think the Denarius Gray one is more puzzling than the other 2. Tootle, in an interview said that he wants to get to the league and Georgia's going to be better at that. Like, Kind of hard to argue against that from a linebacker point of view. And then Devin Carter with the legacy thing, like that was always going to be a threat, always. But it sounds like the offer was better too. So I don't know, man. I'm shocked. I'm still like, I know I talk about this multiple times every day and do, 2 to 3 Auburn shows a day, but I'm still having a hard time processing like what's truly happening because it's so different than everything else that's happened since literally the first day Hugh Freeze has been head coach.
We'll eventually find some answers to this, I'm guessing, but it could just be a sprinkling of all the above. That might be part of it, but bad luck might be a little of it too. Think about this. How many kids have they either had flip away or they lost, let's say in the last 2 months, where at least the intel that you or I or somebody else close in the Auburn media, they came in second or third. Like it's a ton.
Oh yeah. It
like
is a ton.
You would think at some point, as the saying goes, the numbers will even out. Like it's just a law of averages. So
yeah. I mean, you mentioned Sadarian Morgan, who you went to go see today, JC Anderson picking Ole Miss, and Puma picking Nebraska. Goodness, I'm sure I'm leaving several out, but where Auburn makes the top 3 or 4. I mean, Travis Burgess. I mean, is that relevant now that Auburn has a quarterback? I'm not sure, but it just seems like it's miss after miss after miss. Where is that the case? Is it just truly unlucky? And now it's snowballed into the fact of we're like, oh, now this almost looks bad. Like what, and we've talked about this a million times, like in recruiting, perception is reality.
100%.
And the perception right now is things are falling apart. And I mean, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. And I can't imagine when they're having their staff meetings internally right now that they're fired up about how things are happening.
I mean, what is it? 24/7 has them like the 80th class or something.
It's just something 70 something, I believe. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
Auburn should never be in that spot.
Yeah.
No SEC team really should. Vanderbilt shouldn't be in that spot. So.
And just the first half of the offseason was filled with so much promise, excitement, hope, hype to some extent. Like things are, it's come together. The product that they've spent the last, 2 years has come together. So I don't know. This is very strange. It's very strange. It just doesn't make sense to me. So, another transfer portal window coming. Okay. What? That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. So there's a new transfer portal window that's coming. So the NCAA Committee of Legislative Relief, what a committee. They're issuing a one-time waiver to allow D1 athletes that programs place on the designated student athlete list to enter the transfer portal between July 7th and August 5th. So that'll open next week. The deadline for FBS programs to assign DSAs is Sunday 6th. So this is essentially, Ross Dellinger did a thing on it. An athlete can enter this and be put on that DSA list if they've already been removed from the school's roster due to the House mandate, the new House mandated stuff regarding the roster limits. And if they were eligible during last year. So it's essentially, my understanding of this is hey, you didn't make the team, or not positive we have a scholarship for you. You're then able to enter the portal and take care of yourself. That's my understanding of this.
That's exactly how I read it as well. So this is twofold. Every school is going to have somebody that leaves. That's pretty safe. Secondarily, there are going to be schools, could be Auburn. You might see somebody out there and you're like, Brian, who is that? What's number? Who's 36 or whatever? It might be some walk-on that was at Mississippi State. He decided, you know what? If what they're telling me is true, I'm out of here. Maybe he transferred. There's going to be new guys on everybody's roster. Believe me, college coaches value walk-ons. That for practice purposes, there's always, Auburn's had guys like this too. They end up playing. It happens at the SEC level too. So there's going to be some guys, and it's just a little more intrigue for fall camp. who's that guy going to be for Auburn that left that they wish didn't, and who's that guy going to be that came in that makes an impact? That's every SEC school and schools around the country are going to have it. Of course, more will end up at the G5 level than at Auburn, but it's intriguing. And basically, this is a way for the kids not to get hosed because they changed the whole scholarship structure, like how it works. Some kids are just not going to have a spot. So it's one of the very few times, Zach, that I will ever say in any way, shape, or form the NCAA is doing something good. That is really rare to hear me say. So I'm okay with it.
So DSAs, once again, that stands for designated student athlete. They're grandfathered in, and they're exempt from roster limits. There is no limit to how many. This is Ross Dellinger. There is no limit to how many athletes a school can designate as a DSA. Deadline to submit DSA lists is July 6th. So I don't think this is going to be a thing that the average fan notices. Now, folks who watch, a daily or twice daily Auburn show, early July, we'll talk about it. You'll notice some of these names probably, but I think the average college football fan is not going to notice any of the movement that happens here.
I would not disagree until one of those players makes a play for them on a Saturday afternoon. Then they'll notice that the story. We'll probably have somebody we're going to talk about this fall. Make some fumble recovery.
Good for them. What a cool story that'll be.
Yeah, I'm down with that. So the portal window that people are still more interested in is still the one in December/January. I still get comments from people all the time trying to figure that out. Lawsuits are still coming because the NCAA would like to limit it to one. The coaches, players don't want it that way. There'll be plenty more of that discussion later on that is coming, but not yet.
I didn't tell you we were going to talk about this. Any thoughts on Jacoby Mathews, the former 5-star, went to Texas A&M, picking Auburn 2 days ago?
I didn't even know, to be honest with you. I've been on the road.
Do you remember him?
I do remember him, but that is just so random. How does this end up happening?
Former 5-star that was a legit contributor for 2 years, just popping up at Auburn. What's the downside for that?
That's what I mean by football recruiting is random. I say that all the time. It's the same with portal.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about it before it popped?
No, I've had a weird few weeks, so I'm not quite as into it as I normally am in calling people. But no, I didn't hear that until I read the story.
That's what I mean. And you're pretty entrenched in the Auburn world. What does that tell you? Things are really random when that happens. The portal is harder to follow than recruiting by a million miles.
It just takes one good phone call or meeting, and that's it. It's done.
Recruiting is just the opposite. It's months and months and sometimes years. They're just completely opposite.
Right.
So I'm not surprised. But good for Auburn, though. They're always being on the grind looking for kids. That's what you got to do.
For sure. Brian, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
The Portal Podcast, anything and everything with recruiting. It's every day, brother. Ole Miss podcast, Houston podcast, multiple commitment shows. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but it's the next 4 to 5 days will be absolutely insane. There will be a bunch of 5-star kids committing and stuff. Well, all of it will be
happy 4th to you.
Oh, that is the worst day for me. There's so many kids committing on the 4th. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a few years ago, Cam Coleman just committed to A&M on the 4th. Everyone was like, what? Thank goodness he flipped. So please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.